Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to a rundown of 3 F1 news stories that have caught my eye over the last few days. Kicking us off then, it has been confirmed that starting from this weekend's Australian Grand Prix, a point will be awarded to the driver who sets the fastest lap during a race, with that driver's team also picking up 1 extra Constructors' Championship point. Now, the FIA World Motorsport Council approved the proposals last week, and then that new rule was approved unanimously by the F1 Strategy Group and the F1 Commission yesterday. So, how will it work? Well, as I've said there, the driver who sets the fastest lap of the race will be eligible to receive 1 extra point. However, that driver must finish inside the top 10 to receive it. Obviously, therefore, any driver who sets the fastest lap but finishes 11th or lower, or indeed fails to finish, will not receive the bonus point, and neither will their team. Explaining how this change came about, Ross Brawn said, "Together with the FIA, we have committed to evaluating ideas and solutions that can improve the show whilst maintaining the integrity of our sport. We felt that the reintroduction of a point for the driver of the fastest lap in the race goes in that direction. We have been considering this solution, which represents a response to detailed research carried out with thousands of our fans around the world for a number of months. Now it will no longer be only a matter of record and prestige, but there will be a concrete motivation that will make the final part of the race even more interesting." So, a point for fastest lap then, and for me at least, it's a bit of a pointless change, no pun intended. I mean, it's not going to destroy the sport, but equally it's not really going to make a fat load of difference. The Formula 1 field is not close enough at the moment for that point to land with anybody outside of the top 3 teams, at least on a regular basis anyway. Okay, maybe a Renault or a Haas can nick 1 or 2 during the season, but it's not really that likely. In fact, since the start of the hybrid era in 2014, there have only been very few instances where the fastest lap hasn't been awarded to what we now know as the current top 3 teams. Personally, what I see happening, assuming all top 6 drivers finish of course, is the gap between the drivers running between 1st to 5th being too small to take the risk, and so the last of the top 6 drivers will go for the fastest lap each race. Let's face it, although the field has closed slightly, I can still see there being a big enough gap between 6th and 7th, if you like, for that gamble to work with minimal risk. Basically, the extra point will likely go to the driver running last of the top 3 teams. I've seen a lot of people over on social media who are frustrated that it is only open to drivers who finish inside the top 10, but again, it wouldn't make all that much of a difference at most tracks if it was opened up to the entire field. Even on a fresh set of the softest tyres, most of that midfield will still likely fall short. So even if they had opened it up to all 20 positions, I don't really think chaos would suddenly ensue in that midfield. I'm going to throw my unpopular opinion on this as well, but I'm also pleased they didn't push on with the idea of a point for pole position. For me at least, titles should be decided in a race, not on a Saturday afternoon. But also, look at it from F1's position. Imagine a title decider, the hype that's been built up around that, and then a driver puts it on pole and wins the title in qualifying. That's potentially your TV audience drastically reduced for Sunday's race, and as far as the title is concerned at least, there is nothing on the line. So from that perspective, a point for pole doesn't really make that much sense. Yes, I'd argue that pole is probably more worthy of a point than fastest lap, but I just hate the idea of qualifying deciding a world championship. But before I ramble on anymore, I'll round this part off. A point for fastest lap is not something I'm against as such, but I do see it as a bit of an unnecessary, almost gimmicky change. But it's not something that's going to make or break the sport. Next up, and Liberty Media's CEO Greg Maffei has put the blame at Bernie Ecclestone's door for some of the problems they are coming up against as they try to get race contracts renewed. It was announced a few weeks back that Azerbaijan had extended its deal to continue hosting a Grand Prix, yet the contracts of the Spanish, British, German, Italian and Mexican Grand Prix are all set to expire at the end of 2019. Maffei also said that Bernie suggesting to race organisers that they are paying too much obviously didn't help the situation. Bernie had done a very good job, arguably too good a job, and had drained the promoters. We got a lot of blow back, partly because we are public now and they can see the prices, and also partly because Bernie suggested to a lot of them that they were overpaying. That didn't help the cause. Exacerbating that are governments trying to pull back subsidies, so that creates some challenges. However, Maffei did have his say on the future of the F1 calendar and the potential for new races, adding that a race in Africa and a second race in America are high on their agenda. We remain working on Miami, but there are obstacles to a lot of that. We've looked at other alternatives in the US, including Las Vegas. We've looked at other alternatives in Africa. We are trying to solidify some of the Western European races and bring those in. You are always trying to balance both solidifying where you are strong or core, which is historically Western Europe, and then adding other things like expansion to Vietnam, potentially a second race in China, potentially a race in Africa. Okay, so I for one would love to see F1 back at Kyalami. How likely that is, I don't know, but if it was up to me, it would be on my calendar. As for all this with Bernie though, well, I'm not at all surprised. He didn't want to hand over control of Formula 1. I don't care what all the wonderfully worded press releases said, he didn't. And so he was always going to stir up a little bit of trouble for Liberty where he could. And blaming Bernie for that is fine. But Liberty will be judged on how they find a way out of this and how they turn these negotiations around. As I said last week, it's crucial that those 5 Grand Prix under threat are signed up to new deals. There is a lot of history between them all. And as great as it is to see Liberty expanding the sport into new markets and taking the sport places it's never been, those core European races are a staple of the calendar. Fingers crossed it's going to get sorted and hopefully we'll hear something soon. But there's a lot of stuff up in the air for Liberty. And frankly, I don't think the organisers of these historical Grand Prix are going to make life particularly easy for them. And finally, Kimi Raikkonen has said that the 2019 pecking order is still a mystery and admits that Alfa Romeo could be anywhere between 5th and 10th in terms of pace. This was also alluded to by Daniel Ricciardo last week when he admitted that he doesn't expect Renault to be on the front row, but equally doesn't expect them to be on the back row, stating that they will be somewhere in the midfield. Thanks for that. Many see Alfa Romeo as dark horses this season following a strong end to the 2018 season, a fairly solid 2 weeks in winter testing, and with a vastly experienced world champion on board, they could well surprise. And speaking to motorsport.com, Kimi Raikkonen said, "It's a big mystery. We are going to give our best and see what we get in the first race and just work from there. We are not 100% where we want to be, but if you asked anybody, they'd probably say the same. I don't know if we are 5th or we are 10th. I think it's going to be quite close in the middle pack. If you do your job well, you're going to be much further up than if you have an off day or don't get everything right. We can only do the best we can and see what we get in the first race." As some of you will have heard during Sunday's live stream, trying to pick a running order for that midfield is incredibly tough, especially from 5th down to 9th. We really did struggle. As of right now, I would say Alfa sits somewhere around 6th. The problem is, so do a number of teams. As I've said a few times over the last couple of weeks, one very good or one very bad weekend could easily be the difference between a team going from 6th to 8th in the championship standings at the end of the season. And yes, I know some people think that this season is getting hyped up way too much, but there is no denying that based on the limited information we have at the moment, that midfield scrap will be incredibly close. And I can easily see 3, possibly even 4 teams fighting with Renault for the title of best of the rest. Roll on, Australia. That is it for this video then, and in the comments section down below, let me know where you think Alfa Romeo currently sit in terms of the pecking order, and indeed your thoughts on any of the stories featured this week. Now, I will be back on Thursday, deep breath, with the Australian Grand Prix weekend preview. It's finally here. And don't forget that you can join me over the course of the first race weekend of the season for watch-alongs, reports and reviews. Loads to come, F1 is back. In the meantime, though, you can follow me over on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.